Welcome, everyone. My name is Julien, and it's our turn to talk. So, we're here in the newly renovated Youth Ottawa studio to talk about COJA, Civics Ready, and some of the work we've been doing over the last couple of years and some of the work we're going into the future. To briefly introduce myself before going into things, I'll be the interviewer for the day, asking some questions, having some conversations. And in short, I'm a student at the University of Ottawa in Human Kinetics. I'm the president of COJA, a member of the Ottawa Youth Council, and someone that is really passionate about getting involved into the community, building projects, and just trying to make the world a better place. And I'm here with Emma Smith Johnston. If you could introduce yourself a bit.
Hi, my name is Emma Smith Johnston. I'm in my fourth year of political science at the University of Ottawa, heading to law school next year, and I'm currently COJA's curriculum and coordination development team lead.
Very cool, very cool. So, to give a bit of background, a bit of context for those that haven't heard of COJA, essentially it stands for the Club Apti Jeunesse des Jeunes Adultes, a young adult-led club operating here in Ottawa that's really focused on helping youth and young people in Ottawa build projects that benefit the community. It's really all about building professional skills and life skills, trying things out in spaces that you're passionate about, while also, giving back and being part of something bigger than yourself. And one of our biggest projects this year is the Civics Ready project. I'm really kind of curious to see your perspective on things. We've talked about it a bit like individually, but this will be a nice opportunity to see what your experience has been so far. I think you've been involved for a few months now.
Yeah, a few months. Initially, I wasn't sure what to expect. This is kind of my first time in an organization like this. What drew me specifically, I think, is the voting side of things. I think students nowadays, the statistics show that a lot of students are involved in grassroots movements or protests or online activism, but on the voting side, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I think that's what makes COJA special and what interested me to join.
Very cool, very cool. And to give a bit, to take a couple steps back on how we got here, because now technically this project is a little over a year old now, which is kind of funny to think about. We started it in December of 2024, and you've been a part of it for a few months. So essentially, the step that happened before is what we called like our pilot phase to really just see how the project would go. Could this happen? We had never done anything like this before, so we wanted to kind of take that opportunity and see the feasibility of it. I don't remember if we talked about it, but did I tell you anything about like that pilot phase?
I think a little bit. A lot of it is my own research as well as the COJA basketball game that occurred. So I've looked into past projects, but Civics Ready was kind of the first real execution and look into how we could expand the pilot project and make it its own thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One thing we're working on is the whole, communication thing. Our model is around really built around being able to give new youth and new young people the opportunity to get involved every few months in the projects. We try to, have entirely new teams every few months. At like each stage of the project. If people want to continue, then they can, or if they want to, try and get involved in a different project, then we give them a chance to do that as well. So essentially, like in short, the pilot was a one-day event that we did at Francocité. It was about a couple hours long. We brought in different community partners. Shout out Youth Ottawa. They were one of them. And really the idea with that initial pilot was as simple as right now, youth don't vote proportional to how much they care about a lot of these, political societal issues. What can we do to change that? We didn't really know the answer, and we don't have a perfect answer whatsoever, but it's something we're developing. But our thought was if we give those initial practical resources, if we make those connections with organizations in the space, if we kind of motivate youth and show them that it's not that hard to get started, then that would go a long way to kind of get the ball rolling. And from what we saw with that first pilot, there was a huge amount of interest, and that's kind of why we've decided to invest into this project and grow it. And that's kind of when that second team was built, and then that's when we got our amazing team that Emma's a part of now. So that's a bit of context on that. And as my next question for you, I was wondering, like, kind of what your experience has been so far in your role, a bit about, like, what you do in your role, and then what your experience has been with the team.
So far, we're still really much in the beginning stages of the project. We're starting to build the content and getting the research for it. And in my team, luckily, we have kind of two sides. We have the logistical side of research and presentation, and we also have more of a creative side that's what are the activities going to look like? How can we make this fun and engaging? How the event is going to pan out looking like as a whole, and how we can collaborate with the high schoolers to make it their own project in a way. But so far, it's been really smooth. I have a great team. Julien is a great boss, if you will. And yeah, we're really excited to see what it's going to look like. We have a lot of great ideas. And now in the next few months, we're going to be really looking at how the execution of those ideas, how we can bring them to life. So
Very cool. And just for those that don't really know, because it's a word that everyone has heard of and not necessarily everyone fully understands, what does curriculum mean? It's kind of pretty important for like the role name, but what does that mean for you? What does that mean more broadly?
curriculum to me, I'm also outside of COJA, I'm a piano teacher. So I've had the experience of building curriculums, but it's kind of what we're planning on teaching these high schoolers and what we want them to look at. And part of that curriculum is also how they can engage within their communities and join COJA if they want to in the future. But I think it's mostly what we want them to get from the event, whether that be information or future steps for them to engage in.
Very cool, very cool, and hopefully very appreciated for those that didn't know what exactly we meant by curriculum. And then after that, I guess I'm wondering how you view your role evolving within the project over time, in the next few months, and how do you kind of see the project evolving? Like you mentioned, we're still very much in the early stages of things, building those relationships, setting those foundations. But how do you kind of see things going? Best case scenario.
Best case scenario, all goes smoothly. Hopefully, all of our ideas we can find a way to bring them to life, and hopefully, the people that we want involved in the project, the stakeholders or counselors or organization leaders, whoever we want, is free and able to participate. And we're planning on doing a panel. That's a bit of a sneak peek, if you will, and just get their input. I think a lot of nowadays they want to get involved, but they just don't know where to begin. And I think COJA is a great place for them to be shown what it can look like. And yeah.
Very cool, very cool. And I mean, as someone like you mentioned that's in fourth year, you've seen, I'm sure you've been around a decent amount of people in your time that, are, especially in the world of like legal spaces, care about what happens in the community, care about policy, law, etc. Like, so far from what you've seen, kind of what has been that relationship between people's interest in making a change in the community and their interest or knowledge in like the political process? Like, have you noticed anything specific? Because like you mentioned, like a lot of people, a lot of young people are going to sign the petitions. They're going to show up to the protests. But what have you observed yourself, I guess, like between that disconnect?
I think a lot of people are aware of the problem with low voter turnout, but they're not willing to do anything about it, or at least they don't know how to get involved. From personal experience, I was recently talking to my sister. She said, I want to start volunteering. I want to get involved. I would love to do things for my community, but I just don't know where to look. And I think once you are in that space, it's easy to find the opportunities to come your way and become more involved and do more cool projects. But once you're not in that space, it's kind of hard to maybe reach out or find those opportunities to come your way. Personally, I've worked for a municipal city councilor, and I'm also working for a member of parliament. So I've really gotten to see the behind the scenes of what they're looking for. And now being part of community engagement and COJA, I've seen kind of both sides of the picture. But yeah, I think people just need an outlet. They're looking for them, and that's kind of how COJA fell on my lap. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, but I just didn't know where to look.
That's very cool. Very appreciated for that answer. Yeah, no, from what I've seen, a lot of the time it is that, like, it's once you're in it, it's a lot easier. Things come your way, and you can kind of, explore where your interests are a lot more easily. But until you get that first step, until you have those first conversations, it can be really difficult. Like, that's a big thing of, on a higher level, COJA tries to build these projects in different spaces, whether it's those that are interested in politics, those that are interested in sports, those that are interested in tech. We're trying to kind of build those spaces in those different niches to really help get people in those spaces through their passions. But no, it's definitely very difficult work, because it's like, how do you show an opportunity to someone that they didn't know they wanted, or like that they didn't even know like how to approach to begin with. Like I think talking to a lot of organizations, that's definitely been a big kind of sticking point with a lot of potential programming that people are interested in. Like getting those initial interests, getting those new people involved can be difficult. And I think hopefully I think a big thing, I'm very curious your thoughts on this, but our approach has been, if you make something youth led, youth first in the project from the beginning, I've found and observed that there's a lot more of like that, organic conversation happening, people talking to their friends about something that they're doing as opposed to something that they saw that kind of just existed out there. What has been your thoughts, I guess, so far on like this youth led approach?
I think it's something we need to look more into in the future because I think if we're based off of the youth perspective, I don't think they take the adults sometimes very seriously, or vice versa as well. If I'm speaking from experience, I did my first mock vote in high school, and I remember being in a crowded hallway and trying to answer my vote like this on the wall, and everybody could see my vote. And not only that, people were discussing, oh, what would be the funniest thing to vote, or what are my friends doing, instead of looking at their own interests and how they would vote accordingly. So I think also for the people who have had experiences with civic engagement or voting at a mock vote, or experiences with their high school that were not made by youth, it can kind of create this kind of barrier, and sometimes poor experiences like this one. So hopefully with COJA, we can kind of, if they have those experiences before, we can turn them around and see them what it's really supposed to be like.
Hopefully, I'm very excited to see how it goes. Yeah, with the pilot, we did have like a mock vote, and we had everyone. We had like a nice little box, and
Yeah.
we had a cool collaboration with a university club that had done that in the past. So they kind of had that experience. They've seen what could go wrong, and essentially, like we counted all the votes after and kind of tallied it, just kind of for fun to see what would happen. And for a little bit of context, we essentially, I believe, what we did was we just had like different people that have in the past represented each party, like for a federal election. We had a ballot that represented and looked pretty similar to a normal ballot. And then basically, like when we ended up counting it, it was largely in line with kind of what you're seeing in general society and what you'd expect. So that was kind of interesting that like it wasn't just 100% of people voting for like the other party that we just threw in there because we needed an extra spot, or like the other individual. So that was interesting. And I think a lot of the time too, what happens is, I had a similar experience where it was kind of they threw one together, which was appreciated in terms of the thought, but a lot of the time, teachers just don't have the resources to be, and like the time to be organizing whole events, and the educational component, and the bringing the experts in, and the partnerships with organizations needed to go and take that extra step. So hopefully, through this project, we're kind of able to do that, and it's very funny to hear that you had like that same story. That's
Yeah, and if I can add something really quick, I think also, since adults are really far from maybe their first time voting experience or the high school experience, sometimes there is a disconnect between the two. So it's really nice when maybe a bit of older youth can come in and be those mentors and those guides for the first time voters, because the statistics show that once you're a first time voter and you've developed that habit, then you're more likely to develop it long term and stay with it. So we're trying to make that first time voting experience really special and memorable, in hopes that they can continue doing so.
very cool. And just for a little bit of context as well, like I think Emma mentioned it, really with this project, the major focus is around, showing high school students what voting is like. And, we've kind of had those conversations throughout those brainstorming sessions of like, but why high school students, they can't vote yet, right? Because it's like, it's going to be some period of time until they can. But the idea is, like you mentioned, we looked into it, we found some studies, and if we can get people voting as of 18 or the first, possible election they can, it's just so much easier from there, because that barrier of I'm scared what's going to happen, or I don't know how it's going to work, is gone. Obviously, other things come up, and other things can be reasons that people don't vote, but especially for young people, like that initial just anxiety of I don't know what's going to happen when I go through those doors can be stressful. Like I'm, someone that I've lived a pretty full life so far, and I've gotten the chance to do some interesting things. But I had my first election when they had the provincial and federal election last year now, and I don't know why, but like going into it, even though I knew the full process at this point, I already been part of the project for months. Like I was still stressed going in to do that first vote. Okay, there's a huge line here. People are waiting. Are they going to give me a pen? Do I need to bring my own pen? Like it was some ridiculous stuff. But once I did it for the first time, it was just easy after that. Now we have the municipal election coming up in October 2026 that I'm excited for. I have pretty much no stress about how that's going to go in terms of, just filling out the ballot. And I'm able to kind of put that energy into, okay, who do I want to vote for? How do I learn what their platforms are and all that kind of stuff? So,
Yeah, and if I can add to that as well, not only is there some kind of stress and unknowing of what that looks like, there's also this misconception of, oh, I'm a young adult, my voice doesn't matter, it's not going to affect how the election's going to go and who's going to end up winning. So trying to disconnect from that idea that youth voices don't matter and their interests aren't listened to.
yeah, no, I don't know why, but I guess I just found some time a few days ago, and I was just kind of going through the voter turnout for like every ward in Ottawa in 2022, and I found I kind of saw the different wards with their different voter turnouts and kind of how that worked, and it was interesting that like the margins between the winner and second place were decently large margins. Like you'll see 5, 10, 15% margins, but when you consider that at the municipal level especially, the total voter turnout in some wards is 40% or lower than that, 38%. If the youth voter turnout goes from 40 or 50% to 80 or 90, if that happened, that would single-handedly make someone that had no chance of winning all of a sudden a major contender, right? So obviously those are big changes, and that takes a lot of effort we're working on. But the idea is that if your school alone, like everyone from your school who wouldn't have voted started to, those make big differences, especially at the municipal level where 200-300 votes is a big amount of people, right? So that's what I've seen, but I didn't realize how aligned we were on that. My next question here is, I guess, how have you seen so far the benefits of being part of a COJA project? I find we try to take a pretty unique approach when it comes to how we build roles, how we assign responsibilities, how we kind of do most of our things, specifically around like that learning realm. And so far, just kind of having conversations with people, it's been very like unique or different for them to kind of be in this kind of role. Like they're very much used to being assigned like these are the tasks you have to do by this date, even in volunteer context. So kind of how has that experience been for you? Like I'm very curious to hear good, bad, whatever you've seen so far.
Great. I remember speaking to Julien initially about what is my role going to look like, and I was truly expecting you to just assign me something, but you were looking for my perspective and what I wanted to work on specifically. And I ended up as the curriculum development team lead, which has been really a pleasure. The team is so nice to work with and extremely flexible. We're all university students or high school students. So we really, they focus on what they want to study and implement, and they find the time to do it. And we're really just a cohesive team that understands each other. And yeah, that's it.
And you mentioned that this is your first time kind of in that, community service team lead context in a project. Like, have you had any surprises or any specific experiences, whether it's like managing the team or just kind of managing your own tasks that you've kind of, gone through in the last little bit, like being that team lead?
I'm not sure, actually. Sorry, I
Oh,
don't
all
have a
good.
good answer for that. No, so far it's been really smooth. And everybody has their assigned roles within my team, and we collaborate a lot with the other stakeholder engagement team, and it's really just been very nice so far. It's a really great creative outlet. Yeah, you get to see how event planning works, and get to know more about your community, how municipalities work, how elections work. So yeah, that's kind of all I got. Sorry.
Well, I know that's
It's
great
not
to
a great
hear. I
answer.
mean, it's good to hear.
Yeah.
And then this next question here is pretty much if someone was asking you, if you were at one of the events helping out as a volunteer, or so you're at some sort of event and someone is curious, asking you kind of what kind of stuff you do with your time, and they were curious about what it meant to join COJA for a project, or kind of what it meant to be in a Civics Ready project specifically, what would you kind of answer? How would you kind of explain what it's like to be in a COJA project? Because we've kind of talked about it high level, that you've had good experiences, which is great. But I'm curious, like, how would you kind of frame that to them?
I think it really depends on what they want to focus on. Some people, they were interested in reaching out to stakeholders or counselors or MPs or talking to different leaders or whatnot. And some other people were focused simply on doing research. They didn't want to think much about the creative side of the event planning. And other teams, they're in talks with the high school teams. They're planning out what they're expecting from the project and how they want to implement it, what the space is going to look like. So I think we can really work to anybody's strengths if they want to join COJA and focus on their interests about the program and place them in a spot where they're comfortable. But yeah, I think we're very flexible in that sense. Just fit you where you want to be. And we're just happy to have you.
Perfect. And my next question here is a bit of like the different side of the equation. So, we tried to, whether it's in the Civics Ready project specifically, or in some of our other projects like COJA game, try to build the teams in a way to where we see what people's interests are, we fill the gaps around that, and we try to align the interests as much as possible with the responsibilities. On the other side of the equation, there's the partners, the funders, the sponsors, the people, the experts. I'm curious, how do you see in the next few months that group of people really able to contribute to the project, like in that short to medium term?
Yeah. It can come across as different forms. Like you mentioned, it can come through mentorship or sponsorship or providing us the space like the high schools are doing, or simply down to, sorry, losing my train of thought.
All good.
I mean the stuff that we're going to be needing to run the event. So it can come really in different forms, and I think a lot of that is going to come from, we're starting advisory committee meetings recently in the next few weeks, and that includes leaders from across different fields, and mostly in the volunteering space, as well as counselors and whatnot, event leaders on how to run the event as smoothly as possible and the steps we should be taking. So it's been nice to have that guidance. Yeah, that's how you can get involved. If you want to get involved, please feel free to reach out. Any businesses, or if you're a leader in some sort of form, yeah, we'd love to hear your advice and how you want to help.
And I guess related to that, how do you view the role of government, whether that's municipal, provincial, or federal, when it comes to, long term being able to build this project? Like, I very much see this as something that can scale in the long term to other cities in a way that's, very sustainable and very doable. Without predicting the future or anything, how do you feel like ideally those three levels of government might be able to get involved?
I think they can get involved in many different ways that they feel they're up to. Like I mentioned previously, through mentorship or simply just guidance, volunteering your time. And on scaling it's obviously a project that can be scaled in the future, and hopefully the municipal and provincial side of specifically the education system, we can combine this project with their civics courses that they usually take in high school, and hopefully make it an annual event that they expect to see and are excited to attend, and it just becomes part of their year, their education, because that's truly what it is at the end of the day.
That would be really cool to see. I'm excited for that. And then a few more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up. So essentially, we kind of went into it a bit, the idea that, long term, this is something that can grow, but, to having a little bit of fun imagining for a second, 10 years from now, if things go as we're expecting, if the curriculum builds a curriculum that is able to, teach people and help people learn what we want them to learn, if the, public relations team is able to build those relationships, the stakeholder engagement team is able to, really connect and see what do people want. If things go well, 10 years from now, what could this look like?
Absolutely. like I mentioned, I previously, I think it would be something that's expected. It would be an event that people would look towards, and it would simply be part of a high school experience. It would be something that students hopefully can look back positively on their experience as first-time voters, even if a mock vote, or hopefully that also kickstarts their engagement in civics and their interest in that as well. So, sorry, I wasn't sure what was the rest of the question.
Oh no, you covered it perfectly. You
Okay,
covered it
great.
perfectly. Like we said, if people vote for the first time, they're much more likely to vote again. If they vote for the first time and they enjoyed
Yeah.
it, then what is that? I think that's a good
Yeah.
sign. And then next year I have this is my final question. Then we'll start to wrap it up. Whether it be in community service context or professionally, what would you say is your superpower? I'm very curious.
I briefly spoke about this already, but I think my biggest attribute is probably perspective. Being able, having worked for the municipal side and now for the member of parliament side, so more at the federal level, I've been able to see how those institutions approach youth and what their plans are. And now at COJA, kind of on the smaller side of community service, still within municipal, but very much a small organization that's youth led. I've kind of been able to see all sides of the picture, and that's been really great in working on this project. And also as a teacher and a sister of 7 children at home, I have quite a bit of perspective on what the youth are up to these days and different learning styles that are really important and how to keep it fun because they're learning, but it doesn't have to be a boring presentation on civics.
That's very cool. I don't know about you, but I'm very excited to kind of see the events evolve over the next few months. Like
Yeah.
I've, been involved since the beginning of the project now to, more to a less and less extent, I will say, but trying to contribute where I can and, let every team, take on the project and make it their own. A big part of that is obviously being able to give youth the opportunity to learn what it means to vote and beyond voting, how they can be involved. But at the same time, I'm just excited to attend the events, being able to see those experts speak. At the end of the day, I'm, 20 years old. I'm also youth myself. Part of the fun of doing the event is really just the fact that it exists. Because right now, from what I've seen, at least not in Ottawa, like it's there, that this thing doesn't really exist as of now. So being able to see it happen, being able to see how things go, being able to talk to those experts and hear those conversations, I'm excited. Um, so anything else you want to leave us with? Any final thoughts, recommendations, anything on your mind?
Final thoughts would be municipal side of things. We've seen a lot of the statistics. They show that federal and provincial voting is a lot higher within youth. I just want to leave the thought out there that if you think municipal voting is less important or whatnot, specifically as a youth, where they're so impacted, that I mean, the recreational facilities where they do their sports or extracurriculars, or the parks they go to with their friends, and even the school boards. I mean, their lives are surrounded by municipal decisions, and yet we don't see that reflected in our policies and the voting within the youth. So it's important, guys. Go vote.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So to close it out, pretty much as we've mentioned, we're very much open to conversation. Some of our most important values are collaboration, building those bridges, transparency, and being able to build something that can scale to other cities. And at the end of the day, we can't do that ourselves, so we really want to be able to do it in collaboration with others. If you want to reach out to us, if you want to talk to us about how we're doing things, if you have ideas for us, if you have criticisms, we'd love to hear it. Feel free to email us at koja.beaconhill@gmail.com. So that's COJA beaconhill@gmail.com, or feel free to check us out on Instagram. So that's koja again .beaconhill on Instagram. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for having us, Youth Ottawa. This was extremely appreciated. And if anyone ever is, looking to have conversations like these about their organization, I've gotten the chance, I'm sure you have too, to talk to all the youth doing really cool things in Ottawa. Feel free to reach out, Youth Ottawa. Search them up online. I'm sure you can find their email. And they'd probably be happy to host you guys here. Thank you, and that's it. Our time to talk is over for now.
Thank you.